We rushed to the cliff's edge. Below us, the army from the Princess Andromeda had stopped in amazement. They were staring at Luke's broken form on the rocks. Despite how much I hated him, I couldn't stand to see it. I wanted to believe he was still alive, but it was impossible. The fall was 50 feet at least, and he wasn't moving. One of the giants looked up and growled, "Kill them!" Dahlia was stiff with grief, tears streaming down her cheeks. I pulled her back as a wave of javelins sailed over our heads. We ran for the rocks, ignoring the curses and threats of Atlas as we passed. "Artemis!" I yelled. The goddess looked up, her face almost grief-stricken as Thalia's. Zoe lay in the goddess's arms. She was breathing. Her eyes were open, but still. "The wound is poisoned," Artemis said. "Atlas poisoned her?" I asked. "No," the goddess said. "Not Atlas." She showed us the wound on Zoe's side. I'd almost forgotten her scrape with Blood on the Dragon. The bite was much worse than Zoe had let on. I could barely look at the wound. She had charged into battle against her father with a horrible cut already sapping her strength. "The stars," Zoe murmured. "I cannot see them." "Nectar and ambrosia," I said. "Come on, we have to get her some." No one moved. Grief hung in the air. The army of Cronus was just below the rise. Even Artemis was too shocked to stir. We might have met our doom right there, but then I heard a strange buzzing noise. Just as the army of monsters came over the hill, a Sopwith camel swooped down out of the sky. "Get away from my daughter!" Dr. Chase called down, and his machine guns burst to life, peppering the ground with bullet holes and startling the whole group of monsters into scattering. "Dad?" Annabeth yelled in disbelief. "Run!" he called back, his voice growing fainter as the biplane swooped by. This shook Artemis out of her grief. She stared up at the antique plane, which was now banking around for another strafe. "Brave man," Artemis said with grudging approval. "Come, we must get Zoe away from here." She raised her hunting horn to her lips, and its clear sound echoed down the valley of Martin. Zoe's eyes were fluttering. "Hang in there," I told her. "It'll be all right." Sopwith Camel swooped down again. A few giants threw javelins, and one flew straight between the wings of the plane. But the machine guns blazed. I realized with amazement that somehow Dr. Chase must have gotten hold of celestial bronze to fashion his bullets. The first row of snake women wailed as the machine gun's volley blew them into sulphurous yellow powder. "That's my dad," Annabeth said with amazement. We didn't have time to admire his flying. The giants and snake women were already recovering from their surprise. Dr. Chase would be in trouble soon. Just then the moonlight brightened, and a silver chariot appeared from the sky, drawn by the most beautiful deer I'd ever seen, and it landed right next to us. "Get in," Artemis said. Annabeth helped me get Thalia on board, and then I helped Artemis with Zoe. We wrapped Zoe in a blanket as Artemis pulled the reins, and the chariot sped away from the mountain, straight into the air. "Like Santa Claus's sleigh," I murmured, still dazed with pain. Artemis took the time to look back at me. "Indeed, young half-blood. Where do you think that legend came from?" Seeing us safely away, Dr. Chase turned his biplane and followed us like an honor guard. It must have been one of the strangest sights ever, even for the Bay Area. A silver flying chariot pulled by deer, escorted by a Sopwith camel. Behind us, the army of Cronus roared in anger as they gathered on the summit of Mount Talpus. But the longest sound, the loudest, was the voice of Atlas, bellowing curses against the gods as he struggled under the weight of the sky. Chapter 18. A Friend Says Goodbye. We landed at Crissy Field after nightfall. As soon as Dr. Chase stepped out of the Sopwith camel, Annabeth ran to him and gave him a huge hug. "Dad, you flew! You shot! Oh my gods! That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen!" Her father blushed. "Well, not bad for a middle-aged mortal, I suppose." "But celestial bronze bullets? How did you get those?"
Well, you did leave quite a few half-blood weapons in your room in Virginia. The last time you left..."
Annabeth looked down, embarrassed. I noticed Dr. Chase was very careful not to say, "ran away." He said it like it was no big deal.
"I decided to try melting down some to make bullet casings," he continued. "Just a little experiment."
I could understand why all of a sudden Athena, goddess of crafts and wisdom, had taken a liking to him. He was an excellent mad scientist at heart.
"Dad,"
Annabeth faltered. "Percy, Annabeth," Thalia interrupted. Her voice was urgent. She and Artemis were kneeling at Zoe's side, binding the huntress's wounds.